as usual, I'm going to talk about things 4th edition did that 5th edition could learn from. And they should have, and they didn't. Today we're talking about minions. And I'm not talking about just like servants of the great Dark Lord who do his bidding and fail miserably because the heroes kill them. Although, sometimes. I'm talking about the monster concept, the monster type, the monster category that 4th edition uses, called minions. When you're building an encounter in 4th edition, and I'm going to be doing some videos on 4th edition, like the rules and how to play. It's going to go over encounter building. But for now, what you need to know is you have your standard monster. You have elites, which count as 2 monsters, and you have your solos, which count as 4 monsters. And you can build an encounter with a number of standard monsters equal to the number of the players of equal level. And that is a standard encounter. And you can adjust up or down a bit from there. So you can replace 2 standard monsters with 1 elite monster. And you have for a party of 4, you can have 1 elite and 2 standards, or 2 elites, however you like, or 1 solo all by itself. But you can also take one of those standards out and put in 4 minions in its place to increase the number of bodies on the battlefield. I have got this glow around me. I think my camera's smudged and it's creating this filter-like effect, and I'm kind of into it, to be honest. So 4 minions replaces a standard monster. And I actually, as my own personal practice, when I run 4th edition campaigns, I sort of ramp that up a bit. And I'll sometimes replace a standard monster with 5, 6, or 8 minions, depending on the level of the party and how proficient they are at clearing them. So I can scale these up a bit. What minions do, they do a couple of things. One, they create a greater sense of the battlefield, because if you are always fighting equal or lesser number of enemies, that can get a little stale over time. And it also feels a little contrived, I think is the right word, that the bad guys are always only sending X number of enemies at you. In a lot of fiction, particularly action cinema, which is sort of the genre that 4th edition is meant to emulate, in action cinema, there's all sorts of the mooks, they come out and they sort of swarm at you, and they're gonna try and surround you, but they are faceless, nameless minions. And so the heroes are going to easily plow through those guys and get you to sort of the more elite enemies. By which I mean standard enemies in 4th edition are actually kind of elite. You need to focus on them. They are no pushovers. I died to a handful of standard kobolds my very first session in 4th edition. That's a story. So anyways, minions create a sort of cinematic scene that is very difficult to do if you don't have a minion mechanic. Minions have all of the same math as far as their defenses and their hit bonuses and things like that. All the same math as another monster of their level, but they only have 1 hit point. So any amount of damage will kill them. Now, effects that deal damage on a miss still do not damage a minion. They take no damage on a miss, even if the ability would normally deal damage on a miss. But they do take damage from auto damage effects. So in 4th edition, Wizard's Cloud of Daggers does a small amount of automatic damage in an area if a creature starts its turn there. So you can just summon up a Cloud of Daggers and auto kill a minion. There's little, and I'm sort of bleeding into. Let me actually finish this point, and then I'll bleed into the second point. So it creates the situation where there's lots of little guys that you can very easily plow through. And there's even specialized characters or not even specialized characters, but characters who and powers and abilities specialize in taking out minions. And so I can put 20, 30 bodies on a battlefield and expect the players to be fine. Minions also deal less damage than a standard monster of their level. On a hit, I believe they tend to do the monster's minimum damage. They don't even roll for damage. So like on a crit, it doesn't do anything extra for them. They just do normal damage. They're super easy to run. Their stat blocks tend to be quite simple. They usually don't have any special actions other than a basic attack. Although sometimes there are exceptions to that, particularly if there's like a racial power that you would expect every member of a race to have. For example, the Kobold shifty ability, being able to shift one space as a minor action. Kobold minions will have that. But usually they have no cooldowns, no like recharge abilities that you need to keep track of. Everything they do is at will and pretty basic. So you can do several of them very quickly. They're kind of like a marshal in that way. They have nothing to worry, they have nothing to think about. They just go forward and die. If I should have specified 5th edition marshal. That would have landed the joke a bit better. So anyways, so the first thing they do is they create that sort of cinematic atmosphere where you're surrounded by bad guys. You know, the putty men from Power Rangers. They are the horde of ninjas, you know, and the conservation of ninjutsu. The more ninjas there are, the easier it is to take them out. So lots of ninjas, kill them just constantly. One hit, poof, they go down. You could just turn and go to the next guy. The other thing that it does is it creates a situation where multi-target incidental damage becomes useful. Things like the Dragonborn breath weapon. Now, from a design perspective, you never want the breath weapon to be really powerful. You don't want it to, for example, replace the basic attack. It needs to be a more situational benefit. And generally speaking, with an AoE, what's the situational benefit? When you have a lot of enemies clumped up together. A lot of enemies? Well, that sounds like minions. And since it doesn't do very much damage, you might as well use it on minions instead of normal monsters. Because normal monsters, they have enough hit points that, you know, like 3 damage, 4 damage isn't very meaningful to them. It's unlikely that that small amount of damage is going to stack up to be the equivalent to basically save you an extra hit. Because like, let's say it takes you 5 hits to take out a standard monster. Let's say it takes you 4 hits to take out a standard monster. Incidental damage, like if you do 2 more damage on top of those 4 hits, that only matters if that last hit kills them within a margin of 1 or 2 points of damage, which is pretty uncommon. I think you'll agree. Like the chances of that happening are pretty low most of the time. It will happen, but it's unlikely. So incidental damage, which is what I sort of refer to any kind of ability that does that very small amount of damage that is unlikely to affect the time, the number of actions it takes to bring down an enemy. Incidental damage is actually really powerful when minions exist. You know, if you can expect that most fights are going to have at least one group of minions, then suddenly it behooves the party to bring an AoE small damage ability. Either have a Dragonborn in the party, or maybe the wizard preps Burning Hands. You know, Burning Hands does what does it do? It does like 2d4, 2d6 damage, something like that. No bonuses. It's a very small amount of damage. I call Burning Hands an incidental damage spell. Because it does no other benefits. It's just damage. So I think it is 2d6 now that I think about it. Maybe 3d6. I don't remember. I don't remember how much damage a Burning Hands does. No one casts it because it's a bad spell. Why is it a bad spell? Because there are no minions in 5th edition. Everyone is a standard monster. So the chances of that damage becoming meaningful are very slim. I think it's a shame that minions didn't make the transition from 4th edition to 5th edition. I think partly because it's just a good mechanic. It does a lot of things for the system and for the feel of combat to have minions in it. I think it pulls a lot of weight, like a shocking amount of weight, way more than you might think. But the other thing is that the designers still looked at all that incidental damage that would be pretty good in 4th edition. Like these incidental damage effects in 4th edition are still good, especially if you don't need to roll to hit. You know, if it's auto damage, oh, that's a minion clearer right there. There are abilities, there's whole like feats and builds centered around not rolling to hit. Because if you roll to hit, you might miss. If you miss a minion, you don't kill it, even if you would deal damage on a miss. But there are things that do damage automatically without a roll to hit. And those things are good minion killers. The Monk is an excellent minion killer in 4th edition because their Flurry of Blows does not roll to hit. It is automatic damage. Now, you can use it to stack up extra damage on someone that you are already fighting, or you can do your regular attacks on the guy you're actually fighting and then just sort of like pop a minion and get rid of that minion. You know, these are the things that incidental damage can be used for in 4th edition. Whereas in 5th edition, incidental damage is treated like it is not incidental. It is treated like it's full damage. You know, think about the Dragonborn's Breath Weapon, which is worse in 5th than it is in 4th. Not only, I think it actually does less damage. It has no feat support. It recharges on, I want to say it's a short rest, but a short rest is an hour instead of 5 minutes. It takes a whole action to use, which is the equivalent of a standard action in 4th. In 4th, it's a minor action. You get to do your main attack, and then also, if you want, breathe your attack. There's all these layers of nerfs that were done to the Dragonborn Breath Weapon when its only use case, which is killing minions, was removed from the game entirely. This makes no sense. This is why 5th edition design feels psychotic to me, because it is designing certain things and it's balancing certain things for an environment that does not exist. And maybe, like, I don't think, because I did play one of the playtests in the D&D Next playtest. I don't remember there being minions there. I'm pretty sure they didn't exist already. So it's not like, you know, there were minions in it, and then they dropped them right at the end and they didn't have time to adjust everything else. No, like, minions have not been in 5th edition, I think, ever. But every kind of thing that would be only useful for fighting minions is treated as though it is for fighting normal monsters, when it's just not suited to do so. So having incidental damage, small automatic damage effects, or like large AoEs that deal very small amounts of damage, these things are designed for fighting minions. The game wants minions to exist, but they do not, officially. You can always make your own, of course, and I recommend you do. Actually, I recommend you go play a game that has minions. That's what I recommend. So, anyways, minions are good for the game in a lot of different ways. For the feel, for the balance, for just like letting players do heroic things by wading through an army of enemies in a way that the game is still going to support them and make it so that, like, this is a thing that is viable for their characters to do. Because you could just use regular enemies, but then they're probably going to die, and you don't want that. No one wants that. No one wants a PDK. What? A TPK. So, anyways, minions help you do that. Minions are a good mechanic. They shouldn't have been taken out in the first place. Why, oh why, were they removed?